let's let the audio folks come and make sure that the movie's going to play properly. I think we'll give them a few minutes. They are on the way. Let me say a few words then. Okay, I'm with the Canadian Association for Equality, which is the sponsor of the event tonight. This will make for a good test, and I won't take up more than a few minutes. As soon as they get here and they have hopefully fixed the problem and we know it's going to be a reliable film screening, we'll go right to the film. But let me just tell you very quickly, Canadian Association for Equality, who's heard of this educational charity before? Who knew about it before we started advertising this event? Oh, okay. Even more of you? How's that possible? Well, anyways, a lot of you know about CAFE, which is terrific. So we are an educational charity. We also do social services. So very broadly, we're involved in raising consciousness and public awareness about boys, men, and fathers' issues. And we believe that these are issues that affect men as well as families, which is why we run an agency called the Canadian Centre for Men and Families, where we do everything from mental health programs for men, that includes therapy, counseling, and support groups. We also provide legal services there for men who have low income and can't otherwise get access to legal support. We provide a program called Fathering After Separation or Divorce, which is really the only one of its kind in Toronto. And that's really about putting children front and center, but empowering dads so they can be as involved as possible in the life of their children following a family breakup. And then we have Toronto's first and so far only support group for male victims of domestic abuse. And I can tell you that these programs, but especially that last one, are getting a lot of support from the community. We have victim service agencies, family service agencies, homeless shelters, and a wide variety of other agencies here in Toronto and beyond referring men to us and working in partnership to bring an awareness that men can also suffer from domestic abuse or from these other men's issues that we care about. So this is a positive movement. And I think one thing you'll notice from the film is that very often these conversations about gender can get quite polarized. That's not the point of this movie. It's about bringing people together. And our goal with CAFE and, of course, at the Centre for Men and Families is to find positive, collaborative solutions to problems that affect men as well as their families. Now, outside, later on, we're going to be providing opportunities for you to contribute to what we're doing. We've got some pretty big news. We have a couple of donors who have stepped up to help us do a year-end matching campaign. This is something I was going to get into, but we'll start the film as soon as we can, so I'll just be very brief. We have the ability to give out charitable tax receipts to anybody who's generous enough to contribute, either to the programs and services that are badly needed in Toronto, or to a new initiative, which is to open an Ottawa Centre for Men and Families. Some of you may have heard that we were planning to screen this film in Ottawa on Sunday, and that we had some problems with that screening. Who knows what I'm referring to? Wow, you guys are the most informed audience I've ever had the pleasure of speaking in front of. So as of yesterday, this is breaking news, the theater we were supposed to screen this very film in decided to pull the plug on us and cancel the booking. So CAFE, we don't dwell on these negative hardships, we just look for solutions. And within hours, our team in Ottawa and at the national level work together to find another venue. And it couldn't be a better venue, it's the Ottawa City Hall. So we're very, very pleased. Yeah. Go Ottawa, I guess. So it's going to be a great event. We're probably going to have a lot more people out than we otherwise would have. And we're going to, on Sunday, announce to the Ottawa community that we have this campaign that we're launching to open an Ottawa Centre for Men and Families. We have an amazing donor. He's here in this auditorium, but I'm not going to name him just now because I haven't checked with him. But he's been very generous in donating or in pledging up to $25,000. That's half of the budget to get an Ottawa Centre for Men and Families off the ground. And we're really hoping other people from Toronto, from Ottawa, and elsewhere in Canada will step up. Over the next 4 weeks, any funds that you donate, dollar for dollar, up to $25,000 will be matched. And if we can get to $50,000, then we can open a centre in the nation's capital, which would have tremendous implications, both in terms of services for the Ottawa community, but also in terms of political advocacy, in terms of raising awareness in the nation's capital. It's a key place for us to be, especially since men and boys clearly need a home in Ottawa, because look what happens when we try to organize these theaters. We've also tried on campus, and we're kind of chased from venue to venue. So if you think men's health is important, that fathering programs are important, that abuse support programs for men are important, let's build a home for men and families in the nation's capital. We have a small window where every dollar you donate will be matched. up until the end of the year. So please take advantage of that. Let's send a positive message in the face of these kinds of challenges. We're not going to react in cynicism or anger or frustration. We're going to build a positive and welcoming space. I hope that you will join me and make that a reality. And by Denise coming up here, I guess I'm a little long-winded.
Well, I don't have the technical.
Is the technical officer here?
Seems good now.
Seems good. Shall we give it a try? Shall we start the film? Okay, do it. Very quickly, if you want to support what we're doing, just come talk to me after the event. I'm going to turn things over to Denise. She'll say a few words on behalf of the hosting organization.
Tonight, I, Denise Fong, on behalf of all of us at the University of Toronto Men's Issues Awareness Society, bestow upon you a rare movie. For the first time in Toronto and in all of Ontario, I give you the Red Pill documentary film and panel event. I hope you enjoy it, find it inspiring, maybe learn something, and not forget it. Though you may forget, because as I understand it, what we often see or hear can easily be forgotten, often within about a week's time. And even with the most open of minds, humans have tended to follow similar social themes throughout history without really breaking new social ground. Unless, of course, you are a social change agent. And unless, of course, you've had a traumatic experience in your life and your personal history tells you that some of the things that will be brought up in this film tonight are especially attuned to you and sticks to your guts so tremendously hard that you would treat particularly opposing perspectives and viewpoints like someone fighting for his or her life with an extreme survivalist sense of fear. And fear and anger and defensiveness quickly follow you wherever you go in your thoughts, for obviously good reasons, for you. Those emotions have a purpose there. Those emotions, however, don't often work very well with discussing important topics for the sake of those topics, and for objectivity, and for truth and social progress. But we have something that guides us. And before we bring the lights down, I will leave you with this. Facts, evidence, integral research, the scientific approach, the data that guides the establishing of scientific theories, that does not have to be at odds with gender study. Science offers us our very best chances of breaking new social ground. Whoever thought of combining the arts and sciences, Shakespeare, Sagan, Vonnegut, Da Vinci, are just a few intellectual greats who in their too short lives have already shown us the way through. And even if you are dealing with the effects of trauma on a daily basis, I'm sorry if you are, I would invite you to take a few deep breaths tonight and consider honoring what you must have already experienced as abuse and injustice by coming into this event with the purest possible presence of mind and calm. Because the path to knowing what's true and what's real, as we've seen it here at the UT MIAS, and especially at Cafe, the path to knowing what's true and what's real can be made more easily when we accept the good and the bad equally. Which helps me to explain to you how tonight is not a debate, the panel after the movie, because our very best panels at the UTMIA are discussion-based, knowledge-based, evidence-based, where each and every one is free to not only say what they think, but to dialogue safely with one another, civilly and with a mind to learn new things from others. Because you never know where you might end up. And like your mind could be blown. My final say is about what happened to me a few nights ago when I was doing my thing on social media, and I had the fantastic luck of encountering this genius on YouTube through a Facebook friend of a Facebook friend, which is necessary. And then I had the luck of seeing this funny musician called Tim Minchin, whose songs I'd never listened to until he gave a speech at his school, which is what I saw on YouTube, and which was this nice thing he said from a singer-comedian's most honorable perspective about how we could approach university education today. He said, "Attack your opinions, and yours should be instantly and thoroughly examined. Be hard on your beliefs. Take them out on the veranda and hit them with a bat. Be ever intellectually rigorous. Identify your biases, your prejudices, since most of society's arguments are kept alive by failure to acknowledge nuance. We tend to argue like two tennis players trying to win a match by hitting beautifully executed shots from either end of separate tennis courts." And I think to his credit, as a really, really, really funny guy, Tim's one of the rare people on earth who can make these things that people find very upsetting really edible to large audiences. And wouldn't it be awesome if we at the U of T tonight succeeded in offering exactly that? A very edible, wide-reaching red pill. Thank you. Please help us continue free dialogue on campus.
Before everybody takes off, you should know that Cassie Jaye, the filmmaker, will be joining us.
I'm not as persistent.
We're gonna work on that. We're having another technical difficulty moment, so that gives me a couple of minutes. Karen, you want to come up? You guys all enjoy the film? Thank you.
Is this not on? Can we make this on?
We're gonna connect with Cassie in just a couple of minutes. I just wanted to invite some of my colleagues up here and tell you, just kind of give you a reminder that we are in this very critical 4-week crunch period where we're trying to fundraise both to continue the programs and services in Toronto, which, by the way, respond to many of the issues that were touched on in this film with that kind of positive problem-solving approach that I referred to earlier. So we have, we think, a really good response to some of these issues about fatherlessness and parental alienation, about some of the ways in which men perceive biases in the legal system. Some of the mental health programs that we provide relate to suicide prevention. We have Toronto's only domestic abuse support group for men. You heard a lot about that in the film. So if you want to support all of these programs that are really changing the lives of men and families in the Toronto community, you can support those programs. You can also, as I said earlier, donate so we can get a men's center off the ground in Ottawa, in the nation's capital, which, as I referred to earlier, would bring benefit to the community, but also have great implications in terms of raising awareness at the federal level. So right now, for the next 4 weeks, we do have a donor who is matching dollar for dollar every contribution up to $25,000. I did the math in terms of the numbers here today. If everybody were to donate $50 or become a member, which is roughly $50, we would actually have the funds we needed to build that men's center. We could do that, as soon as next month. Get that off the ground in early 2017. For Canada's 150th anniversary would be just perfect. So donate what you can, even if it's just a little bit. There's quite a number of you here today. We can actually make this happen tonight. So please do that. Now, very quickly, before we go to Cassie, there's a few things you were given as you entered. One is your ticket. On the back of the ticket, it's actually a mini questionnaire. It's very simple, only 2 questions. We'd love for you to fill that out and then dump that into the bin that we have out front. There are volunteers that will help you with that. The other thing we gave you very mysteriously was that envelope. And in the envelope, you'll find a little sheet. If you do decide to generously donate whatever you can, and you do want a tax receipt, just fill out that sheet and give us your contact information, and we'll send you a tax receipt, or you can just put some funds in there anonymously is, of course, fine as well, and then drop those envelopes out front. We're going to have an auction that Karen here, our Director of Development, has organized. Say hi to Karen, everyone.
Hey.
That is next Sunday, December 11th. If you want to get more information about the auction, we're going to have really amazing things like watches. I feel like I'm on a game show here. Jerseys, handbags, all sorts of things. So you can, and all those proceeds will raise money for men and families. So you can join us at the auction, or you can sign up outside to volunteer, or just get on our email list and find out about all the important events that we're doing. And now I'm hoping we can go to Cassie. How are we doing there?
Okay, I'll try and bring her in on the. I'm trying to piece
Okay, we're going to try to bring her in now. Good stuff. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm not familiar with Skype.
Hello.
Hello, Cassie. Can you see us?
I cannot.
Every step of the way, we've had technical trouble tonight. Do we know how we can enable the video? You can't see it, Cassie, but there is an auditorium packed with, I think, mostly fans of yours.
This is the mic's here. The mic's on the
Thank you
camera.
so much for coming tonight. Oh my goodness. I wish I was a fly on the wall there. I'm so curious how the whole evening went and how you all enjoyed the film or not. I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts.
No, it's.
It was great.
So why don't we do this? There we go.
Recognize yourself in the film?
Yeah.
Oh no, some gray-haired wizardly looking fool said something.
There's Dan.
Cassie, because we're unfortunately running a little bit late tonight, maybe you can start by just telling us a little bit about what motivated you to put this film together, you know, your impressions of how the world has reacted to this groundbreaking film, and then maybe a little commentary on the role that the University of Toronto, because that's where we are tonight, played in making this film possible. Can you do that for us?
Yes, oh my gosh, starting with the significance of showing this film in Toronto at UFT of all places is pretty incredible. I'm glad the show went on. That's exciting. You guys made for some great footage for my film. Yeah, oh gosh, so making this film, it really did change my life. I don't know if there's anything else in my life that had as much of an impact on me as this past 3 years, or 3.5 years of making this film. As you can see in the film, it was definitely a life-altering journey for me, an ideological struggle and kind of tumultuous time for me. But to give you a little bit of insider knowledge on behind the scenes of making the film, I didn't drop the label of feminist until last year, and so it actually took me 2.5 years until I got to that point where I actually dropped the label. And I don't mean for this film to tell other people what to do with their own beliefs or what they say as or see as the road to gender equality. But for me, after making this film, that was what was right for me. But yeah, I went into this film thinking that it was, well, as you could kind of tell from the beginning of the film, I thought it was a misogynistic hate group that was looking to turn back the clock on women's rights. And that was the film I was intending to make and thought I was going to expose and be this controversial, in that kind of way, controversial film exposing this hidden underground group of misogyny. And sure enough, I started talking to all these different men's rights activists and people in the middle and feminists, and realized that it wasn't so black and white, and the way that the mainstream media was portraying the men's rights movement was not the same reality that I saw in front of my face when I was doing these interviews. And then just kind of accidentally, I had these video diaries going on throughout filming, and realized that that was kind of its own journey, making the film, and then made the difficult decision to include those in the film, hoping that why I included the video diaries was because it was the film that I would have wanted to see 4 years ago before I embarked on this journey. I think it makes it a little more relatable and easy to digest this red pill. So,
Great choice!
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Cassie. We're going to take questions. Okay, it's actually coming in through here, right, Mark? Okay. We're going to take questions from the audience. Are you okay to answer a few questions? Stick around for a bit, Cassie?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. We're going to also bring down some panelists that we've assembled, some local activists who have different perspectives on this film and the issues it represents. So if I can get Vanessa to come join us, and Patrick, where's Patrick? Come on down. And that third seat's actually mine, but I'll just sort of stand and hover around it. Yeah, wherever you like, Patrick. We're going to go to questions, and you can address your question to Cassie, and probably many of you will, but the panelists here, you can also ask them what they thought. Perhaps, actually, could each of you just take a minute to introduce yourselves and your background and why you think this film is important? Yeah.
My name is Patrick. Press the button to turn it on. Can you hear me?
I think you just have to speak up, Patrick.
Okay, I'm going to project, but luckily I have an amazing voice, so it'll be fine. Okay, so my name is Patrick, and I'm an Irish journalist and activist, and I became interested in men's rights when actually I moved to Canada, I would say, when I found the culture in Canada to be very different from where I was from, and I found the way in which men and women interact to be, I guess, somewhat different to what I was used to. I don't really like to say I had a red pill moment, but what I would say is it was after debating perhaps one or two feminists that I came to realize, and things probably weren't what I thought they were. The idea of equality wasn't quite what I thought it was, and that for me was really when I got interested in the men's rights movement, probably around 2010, 2011. And I've made some very, very good friends along the way. I can see some of them here today, so yeah, it's been quite a ride, and I guess the movie for me feels like a win. In the men's rights movements, there aren't a lot of very obvious, very big wins, and tonight, having seen this, it feels like a bit of a vindication. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy to see so many people here. So it's pretty awesome, and yeah, just keep going. Thanks.
A little bit louder.
My name is Vanessa, and I actually got invited last minute because the other one, I guess, couldn't make it. Oh, sorry.
It's more complicated than that.
So I actually, just briefly, I was interested in this film a lot, and I've been following it for the last year because I had a sort of similar journey to Cassie in my 20s. I'm, I think, the same age as her, actually. And I wrote a book, actually, on gender issues, and I ended up including both feminists and men's movement people like Lauren Farrell in our book. And I sort of went through all the same conflicts that she went through, having both voices. It was an academic book that took 7 years to fucking publish.
And I've talked too much, so I'm not going to say another word. Let's go to questions from the audience. You, sir.
Cassie, well done. Quick question. I understand from reading the preliminary work, and then you've also mentioned it in some of your interviews, that back in 2012 or so, you were looking into the rape culture. That was one of the things you were going to investigate, see if that was a thing or not. So the question is, you've been through all of this. Curious to know, can you confirm or affirm in the West, did you learn that there isn't a rape culture, as as our dear friend Lauren Southern has observed sometimes, or is there a rape culture in the West? What's your view on that?
Oh, good easing question. Oh man, that's something I thought, man, I wish I could make another film going down that rabbit hole, because I'm sure it'd be fascinating, and I think I'd learn a lot more than I do now know about rape culture, or the idea of rape culture, the controversy around it. I would like to explore it more before I have a definitive, this is my opinion about it, but yes, I would agree with what I think you're hinting at, that it's an over-inflated idea that so many people are victims and so many rapists walk the streets, and all women have to watch their back at any rustling bush for a rapist to jump out at them. I don't think it's that widespread, and we do, as you can see in the media, we do see active efforts to shame anyone who's accused of rape, whether or not they've been found, the evidence has found them to be guilty. So if we lived in a rape culture, it would be, applauding or hurraying the people who were accused of rape. So we don't see that happening. I think it's definitely a giant rabbit hole that I would have loved to have gone down, and I didn't have enough time to in this film. I think something that is the culture we live in is dismissing male victims, and I've definitely seen that. Victims of abuse or sexual abuse, even as a child. This kind of idea that they're lucky if they were abused by a teacher, or that they should like it because they're a guy, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's a sticky subject.
Thank you.
In the interest of time, let's move to the question.
So my point about this is I would really like to stop having this fluffy discussion about women's feelings and what I think and my perspective. I want to hear about us and men. That's what I want. I don't want to hear about us or you. I want to hear about what we deal with every day. That's what I really want to hear about. The cultural Marxism and the fact that there's no place for men in real terms, not this fluffy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you for your comment. Next question. Yes.
Casey, what you brought the label of feminism. So what label do you use now? That's a quick question. And the second one, as a communication professional, how do you think those two divides can be bridged? The men's movement, how can we bridge from a communication perspective the men's movement and the women's movement?
Okay. feminist now. I am trying out being labelless for this time being, if that's possible, if people allow that for me. I don't know if that can last in today's kind of society that we live in, where people want to give you labels for yourself if you won't accept one for yourself. But I haven't become a men's rights activist. I've always said I'm just a filmmaker. I've made a film about the men's rights movement. I'm not an activist. I'm a filmmaker, I'm a journalist. But I was a feminist, and I dropped the label because of my journey making this film, and I still support women's rights and girls being empowered, and always will. But I don't see feminism as the answer to gender equality. I don't have a label. I've thought of egalitarian, humanist, equalist, but right now I think I just want to take each issue on its own and have discussions and debates with people, and maybe, I'm 30 right now, so maybe later in life I'll have a more definitive idea of where I stand and put my flag down on a certain territory. Oh, and then the second question, what was it?
How to bridge.
How to bridge.
What I'm doing is just working on this film, create a bridge for discussion. I really did make this film with my family and friends in mind, and myself 4 years ago in mind, for the best audience to see this film. Who knows if they'll actively choose to see this film on their own. Obviously they're trying to stop this film from others being able to see it, even if they haven't seen it themselves. I think a lot of people who have been involved in the men's rights movement over many years know everything that's discussed in this film, so it's just kind of a new way to package it together and then in a 2-hour-long film. But I hope this film can be seen by feminists and people who've never thought about men's issues before. And one of the first things that a lot of people said to me when I said I was making a film about the men's rights movement was they would say, well, what men's rights? What rights are they being denied? So that was one of my big goals with this film, was to try to educate people and bring them up to speed with what are the men's issues. And then let's go from there. But yeah, discussion is key and education is key for bridging the gap.
I'd like to invite Patrick to weigh in on that.
What was the question?
How to bridge.
How to bridge the
And
gap.
your label.
And your label.
I don't really go in for labels too much, because I think that the strength of what you say and the arguments that you make are more powerful than any label. But in terms of bridging the gap between MRAs and feminists, I think the best way to do that is for there to be an acknowledgement that men do have issues, real issues that need to be addressed. And we're not going to get anywhere if we continually mock those issues, if we continually think that men don't have real problems. So I think that has to be the start to bridging the gap. An honest attempt at saying, okay, there are problems and let's work to address them. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that the gap can even be bridged. That's a different question.
Your thoughts, Vanessa?
Similar, I think, of Cassie and you, I don't identify as feminist or MRA, and that was also something I came up doing in my book topics. I'm really interested in how we bridge dialogue, and that's kind of what I've been working on for the last decade of writing on these issues, and my own views have changed on that. I think one of the things I would point out, so I'm connected to a lot of people who do men's work in different parts of the world, so the UK and Australia, and obviously Cassie here, I've done some fundraising events with.
in the feminist movement, it is dominated by radical feminism. That's the truth, okay? We can sit here and make nice and say that the feminist movement is our friend and it's a great movement, but the reality is, and the reality in this university, in fact, is that radical feminists are the majority. They are allowed, and they can be quite negative. So I think that's part of the problem as well. If you really want to bring feminism into the picture, bring your moderates, bring the people who have more reasonable things to say, rather than the people like, as we saw in the film, Big Red.
Yeah.
Hold on, I saw your hand first, and then we'll go to Dan, okay? Please.
Been up since the beginning, Justin. I'd like to
Many hands have been, Dan, so we're going to go to you first and then to Dan. Go ahead, please.
So this is for everyone on the panel. Similar question to the last one. How would you go about talking to someone that is a more radical, like Big Red? Like if you had someone you really wanted to understand that it's about everybody and not just one or the other, how would you go about talking to that person when they are so dead set against men?
I guess I'll take that.
Yeah.
I think it can be incredibly difficult to convince somebody of something, or to make them see a different point of view when they're very, very entrenched in their own point of view. Because, let's face it, people don't like admitting that they're wrong, and those particularly radical viewpoints, especially so. I think, though, there is value in talking to people who have entrenched points of view, because if you're talking to somebody like that, and there's somebody also in the conversation who has a point of view that, well, I don't know, I'm on the fence, I'm not sure, you can help to convince that person to see things in a different way. So there's value there. In terms of changing someone's mind who's so radical and convinced of a certain way of thinking, I'm not so sure that that's a great use of time.
So what you're saying is like, even if you might not be able to change their mind, you can still affect their thoughts?
No, what I'm saying is I think that there's value in talking to those people if other people witness the conversation and see what's going on and see the points of view. So if your point of view is reasonable, backed with fact, backed with reason, you come across as an intelligent, well-spoken person, you're more likely to convince somebody of your point of view. Whereas if you're so entrenched and you're so radical and you will not admit or give an inch, that person is probably less likely to see things your way. And really that's where the value is. The value is in trying to convince those who are not quite sure. I think that's the value.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Cassie, about how to have a conversation with a radical feminist?
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think it's going to be a really hard road to get feminists to come to the middle grounds of men's issues being important too. And I think what broke my hard feminist shell was when I started to analyze my own sexist views towards men's issues and started to ask myself, why do I have this wall up when I think of a man being a victim of domestic violence? Why do I not instantly have compassion for a situation or instantly believe he is the victim and he didn't bring this upon himself? When I was interviewing male victims, I was thinking, how did they get in that situation? And there were so many red flags about this crazy woman who was dating and why didn't he get out sooner? But I knew if a woman was telling me she was a victim of her husband's violence, I wouldn't have been asking those questions. So when I started to reverse the genders, I saw my own bias against men's issues, and that's ultimately what started to make me wonder, well, if I have this bias, I think others do too, and I found that out when I was talking to my family and friends about men's issues. So somehow, I think, I don't have the answer, but I think somehow we need to get radical feminists who start to ask those questions. Why do they have these sexist views of men? And they're so quick to male bash or make jokes about men at their expense when they are victims of suicide or rape or violence or male genital mutilation, all these different issues, custody battle. So somehow we need to get them to ask the questions to themselves if that's possible. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer.
Dan, or local celebrity?
Cassie, a couple of things to say to you. Thank you. Thank you, your husband, your mother, anybody else that influenced your growing up. Thank you for showing integrity. Thank you for being true to your trade. Okay? I wish you all the best in the future. I will impart with you a quote by Thoreau: confidently in the direction of your dreams, live the life you imagine. I wish that for you and your husband. I'd also like to invite you, I don't know if you've been following what I've been doing lately, done 2 suicide walks, awareness walks. I walked from Dundas to Toronto. And then the first one, geez, I might have been a little bit of one of those angry voices, and I parked my butt in front of Queen's Park there for 9 days and did a hunger strike. Earn the respect of those individuals who guard where we are supposed to come together to discuss the issues that face society. Earn that respect of those individuals there. The second suicide walk, I had to do it without my dog Jeb. He passed away. It's my Jeb I warrior. He brought smiles to my face and smiles to a lot of other people's faces.
Rest in peace.
I did it myself. I had to kind of modify it. He died just before the walk there. So I circumvented it, I cut it down. The tally was 60 miles, 45 pounds on my back down to 42 hours. At the end of that journey, there was a cafe there. They were offering me sanctuary twice on those walks. I'll also point out that Sergeant Gus, security staff at Queen's Park there, honorable individuals. You remember one of my proudest moments was when you were doing some interviews there, and I upheld the journalist right under Section 2 of the Charter Rights and Freedom. You were one of those. Damn proud of my moment, that moment there. Okay, so I'm disappointed that our feminist counterpart didn't show up. I'm going to ask a question to them. I'm going to put it out there, float it out there for everything, and I'm going to Canadianize things a little bit for you, eh? Let's get a little bit of Dangle here, some wizardly talking. I do everything off the top of my head. Memorize.
Dan, we're running a little late. Can you go to the question, please?
I'm going to ask for a little bit of latitude here. Do not make me invoke my rights for accommodation.
Carry on.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. Don't make me do that. Okay, Canadian number. I ask feminism to justify itself. Feminism fought genital mutilation 268.3 of courts of the Criminal Code of Canada.
What's the question?
What's your question, sir?
We're waiting for you.
Dan, there are a lot of people that want to ask questions.
If you're going to deal with men's issues, he's a man with an issue. Shut the fuck up. I want to hear him speak.
No. None of that. Excuse me. We will end the question period if this continues. Dan,
We will end the question period.
please ask your
if
question,
this
and let's give other people the same chance.
Justify themselves. They forgot to make genital mutilation against men illegal when they made it against women. We're going to go on to the domestic violence thing. 2 general social surveys, parity. Okay, ultimate, lots of money going in, $145 million a year into the TV industry in Ontario alone. And on the death end of things, let's go with male suicide. Men are 77% of all suicides in Canada. Despite this fact, we have on the Canadian Canadian Health Association website, there is 350 papers for women's mental health and 5,500.
Dan, these are great points, but I'm going to have to ask you to finish up.
Feminism to justify itself.
Thank you.
Now,
Dan, we're going to go to some other questions.
Justify themselves when they silence voices like mine, who is an expert.
But there are 400 other voices
we
here
want
too, Dan. Okay,
to
so you've
allow
made your
everyone
point.
to
It's a
have a
good
chance
point.
to have a voice.
We're going to move on now.
So next
Let's take another question.
We'll take another question.
You pick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. Thank you, Cassie. It was a very interesting film. I'd like to self-identify as a feminist. I also want to say that I'm here for to hear a different perspective. And there are things that really resonated with me in the film, but there's also things that I didn't agree with. Or certain competing perspectives in the staff.
The
Did you guys want to comment on that, or Cassie? Anybody want to answer anything they've heard so far? Any Dan or the young lady's comments, or we can move to another question. It's up to you.
I'll say briefly, unless Cassie, do you want to say something? Or?
You go first. I'll comment after.
I was just thinking, having been in the trenches of like the gender conversation for a decade, yeah, it's trenches actually. It's one of the most, I think, vitriolic conversations. I actually saw an ADF voice for men guy, I forget his name now, but he was writing about this in a review of this, that it's the dirtiest topic he's ever gotten involved with, as far as like the tension on both sides. So I think for me, I'm really interested in creating those spaces of dialogue, and it's really hard. And it's hard for people who maybe don't feel like experts on the topic as well to come in and have an opinion because they feel they might get shut down. So I really just wanted to validate that concern and feeling. I will say personally, controversially, because I know probably people are more on one side here, but I've definitely had bad experiences on both sides of this conversation. I've had bad experiences with MRAs, I've had bad experiences with feminists, and I tend to piss off everyone a little bit. So I would just say that it's not just one way, although I totally get, bigger voice, institutional power. I'm not kind of denying that. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay, we'll take two more questions.
Cassie,
Oh yes, Cassie, were you going to say something?
Yeah, just a quick comment to the last lady who had her comment in the audience. I support what she said. I think the discussion is important no matter what your label is. And I agree with the woman on the panel who just spoke that there was institutional power favored on one side. I mean, we often have very loud microphones given to women's rights activists and feminists, but it's a rare and underfunded occurrence that men's issues get a platform to speak without being shut down. So I'm hoping that there is more discussion around men's issues, and if we can add that to the gender equality discussion without easily being offended or feeling like it's an attack on all women, that's often something I've seen with when you're discussing women's issues, and men have and do feel like their issues are ignored, and they have been ignored since the 70s, especially. Just all these different decades of women getting approval for speaking about their issues and support, and then men try to speak, they get silenced. So if we can add men to the discussion, I think that's where we need to head. I'm glad to see that there's some feminists in the audience. I'm really glad to see that. So thank you all for coming.
And thank you.
Two more questions.
And I just want to remind you that you can always tweet your questions and comments online on Twitter at Equality Canada. Yes, sir? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cassie, for your film. Did you enter this into the Toronto International Film Festival?
Could you say that again?
Did you enter this into the Toronto International Film Festival?
I did not.
Okay.
I missed the deadline. So no conspiracy there. It could have been if I submitted and they didn't.
Let's go to the
And it could submit.
Okay. Last question. Yes. You? Yes?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I have a three-pronged question.
boy.
One, what technology did you use to get your content? And because we have an academic, a journalist, and yourself present, we're so lucky, thank you all. How can we, especially as educators, encourage students to follow a similar path that you did, especially since we all have technology at our disposal at any given moment? The bulk of my day is a news
get everyone in on this question. Vanessa, you want to start? Oh,
Okay.
okay. Oh, Cassie, did you want to respond to that?
Sure. Was the question about the equipment used? I couldn't really hear the question.
Yes, the equipment.
Yeah, that was
Okay. So it was DSLRs, Canon Mark III, and the Zoom H4n audio with a boom mic attached. It's very low budget run and gun. Pretty much just two people on set filming interviews most of the time. And I'm self-taught. I did go to film school, so if you have a passion for filmmaking, just have at it and watch tutorials online. That's what I did. And any other questions?
Okay, what was this?
I'll focus on the third one, because that's one I'm really interested in. How can we, in this society where we're constantly flooded with information, how can we encourage students, or rather, how can we equip them with the tools to filter through the information, to come to their own consensus, or to, so they don't get swept up in the throes of either pole?
Well, have you guys heard of the echo chamber? I'm sure. Where you follow everything online that you know you would already agree with, and so it just keeps on bouncing the same perspectives back and forth over and over through every ear canal, and you don't really get an alternate perspective. I think that's dangerous, and I think social media has a large part to do with that. We tend to like and follow people or organizations we already know we'd agree with. So finding a different perspective, it took me meeting people in person to really start to understand where they were coming from. I think just reading articles online about what men's rights activists believed didn't quite convince me or really get me to understand their perspective, but meeting them in person, then I could ask the question right there that I had for them. Explain to me this, well, what's your view on this? And I often ask them questions about women's issues because I wanted to know that they knew about these women's issues before I could move forward and talk about men's issues. So, if people could meet in person and have a discussion with, these kind of debates in person, and I think that would help. Maybe just start liking pages that you would disagree with, like Twitter or Facebook pages, and instead of always going to that page to convince other people of your point of view, maybe try to understand their point of view.
Okay, Vanessa, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Cassie said, and I think it takes us, some people are just more inclined to be curious about other perspectives, I find, and other people are a bit more, in their perspective and have a harder time shifting. So I know this is kind of a personality type thing as well. But I do think the social media thing is a huge issue, the way we're creating echo chambers. I purposely subscribe to conservative sites and liberal sources, and sometimes I'll start reading a ton of men's rights stuff, and I get really convinced about something, and then I purposely go and read a bunch of feminist stuff. So I just do it to try to always shake up my perspective and be on my own edge, I guess you could say. So that's how I deal with it. And then you're never 100% sure. There's so much bias in all the information out there. So you kind of have to be in dialogue with people, and I think it's also a conversation we have to figure it out together.
Right. Dialogue. Patrick?
I was add to that. I think the fact that you're asking that question suggests that you're strongly on the right path, figuring out the answer. It's really not all that difficult. Cassie and
Louder.
Vanessa.
Louder. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. My point was that I think Cassie and Vanessa have both addressed it correctly, which is seek out a diversity of opinions. Don't allow people or don't allow students to just go to the same sources constantly. A good friend of mine is actually here tonight, is undecided on this, and he sent me a message earlier today. I'm going to read it to you because I think it typifies the mentality that you want to see in students, and it's this. He said, "My whole angle is that maybe I don't believe in what your movement represents, but one of the few things I actually believe in is freedom of speech. I'm just checking out the film and discussion to learn." And that's all you can do.
Exactly.
Just keep an open mind.
Exactly.
Well,
And actually, our last question is from Justin, which was he was supposed to be on the panel.
Yes, so instead of being on the panel and wasting everybody's time, I'm going to just ask Cassie one quick question, which is, what do you make of what just happened in Ottawa? And how do we turn that into an opportunity?
I think it's really unfortunate, and it's something that's happening over and over, where people who haven't seen the film are trying to ban it or cancel or already sold out screenings. And unfortunately, there's the same talking points that are scripted lies about the film that get repeated over and over. And even really big mainstream media film critics have repeated these lies, and that's unfortunately what keeps getting spread and believed about this film from people who haven't seen it. So Ottawa is it's officially the second screening to ever be canceled by the theater due to protesters calling in and threatening the theater or threatening to remove their attendance to that theater. So it's the second worldwide. The first was Melbourne, and we also had a Sydney screening that the University of Sydney originally approved the screening of the Red Pill, and tickets were sold, and then a couple weeks later they revoked approval, so they're now looking for a new venue. So, I feel bad for people in Ottawa that, I guess that's a vocal, large movement there that is, has power to call theaters and tell them to censor a film if they disagree with the content. And no one in this discussion has seen the film. The Mayfair Theater people have not, and the protesters have not.
Well, I think you'll be happy to know we are not reacting in anger to a number of points that were made here, but instead we're going to use this as an opportunity to build a home for men and families, an Ottawa Men's Centre. That's what we're going to translate this into. So, okay, let's wrap it up.
Okay, I think tonight we at the UT succeeded in offering exactly a very edible, wide-reaching red pill. And I'd like to thank our panelists, Vanessa, Fisher, Patrick Bissett, Cassie Jaye. We are so pleased and so happy that you made this movie. Thank you, and thank you to you for making this event possible. You make our events happen. Please support us in the new year.
Please help us build a home for men and families in the nation's capital. Keep the home we have in Toronto going, and help us spread awareness across Canada. Please make a charitable donation and help us get to the $50,000. Thank you.
And have a good night. Thank you, Cassie.
Thanks, Cassie. Bye.
Bye.